This video is brought to you by the 3-Minute Board Game patrons. Keep us independent by supporting us on Patreon. Kia ora koutou and welcome to this very unusual video from 3-Minute Board Games. Now this video is for the people out there who have a lot of models that they just haven't painted. You've ended up buying games that come with miniatures, but you don't have the experience or confidence to paint them yourself. What I'm going to show you in this video is 5 different starter techniques that anyone can use to paint their figures. These are what I like to call no skill or low skill techniques. They're ways you can literally grab any old brush and go blah and paint on a figure and end up with a reasonable looking effect. Sure, these are not as good as pro-painted miniatures, and that's not what I'm pitching to you here. What I'm pitching to you here is a way that you can have your miniatures go from being grey plastic to something that's presentable on the table. Now I'm going to do 5 different painting techniques and I'm going to do 4 different models for each one. These are the end results, and this is what you're going to end up looking at through the course of this video. So here are the 20 figures that I've painted up, and I'm going to show you the different styles I did with them. A lot of them aren't what you would call properly painted. They're painted to look like pieces in a board game rather than a detailed miniature. But they're quick and they don't take any skill whatsoever. Now I'm going to try and show you the entire painting process from start to finish, warts and all. But note that I'm not a professional painter and I don't have a professional painting setup or the lighting for it, so it's going to be a little sketchy in places. But hopefully you can see just enough to see how simple and easy these techniques are, and that you can replicate them at home. And if you have any other questions, just leave them in the comments below. I'll be sure to help you out there as well. I've painted a ton of games over the years, and I used to use a bunch of time-intensive painting techniques. But these days, I tend to use a mix of the techniques I'm going to show you in this video, and I can get through a lot of models a lot faster. Because while it's really cool to have every model you own painted to an expert level, that's just not a realistic thing to do if you have a whole bunch of games and not a lot of time to paint them. So the 5 techniques I'm going to use are spraying the model a single color and using a dip to shade it, painting a model metallic and then using an ink to shade it, using a dried brush and dried paint to paint a model, using speed paints and using speed paints with some minor detail work, very minor detail work. But before all that, we're going to have to show you how to prepare the models by undercoating them. Alrighty, and now before we do any proper painting, we are going to have to undercoat these models. The reason you undercoat models is it just allows the rest of the paint to stick on them better. And we have 3 different types of spray undercoat here from 3 different companies. Now they're Citadel Chaos Black, Army Painter White, and the Tamiya Grey. You can get different colors from each of these companies, and all 3 of these companies do great spray undercoats. These are just what I happen to have in the cupboard when I went to do this video. Now the type of undercoat you pick will make an impact on the painting you're doing, so have a look at the rest of the video before deciding what kind of spray undercoat you need to get. But the company itself doesn't really matter, these are all pretty damn good. What you'll also need though is something to hold the model while you're spraying it so you don't get paint all over your hands. A lot of people use sticks like this where you'll attach the model using blue tack to the stick, or alternatively you can use just some cardboard boxes. I've used some Pizza Hut boxes here in the past, but it is generally better to put them on sticks because you can maneuver the spray can around it a bit better. I'm going to put these models on these sticks and then go spray paint them and just give you a rundown of how you go about doing that. It's a little bit of a technique, but it's very, very basic. So yeah, that's all 3 of them mounted. Those should be pretty good to hold while spray painting. Alright, I wish I had a nicer day to show you out here in sunny New Zealand, but currently it's not particularly sunny, it's a bit shite. It's a lot better to spray paint things, models, when it is dry and when it is warm, rather than when it is kind of moist and cold like it is currently. So yeah, take your spray can, give it a good shake, then extend the models away from you at a 45-degree angle, sort of like start there. Let's give them short sprays and just keep maneuvering gentle swipes down. Don't get too close either. And don't hold the thing down and just spray like a maniac. You're going to be wanting to get as even a coverage as you can. Also just angle up a little. And I'm getting slightly out of frame here. The important thing is keeping the models in frame. And there you have a whole bunch of models that have just been sprayed very light grey. Right, I'm going to put those inside to rest, and I'm going to come out and spray the other ones. See, I probably have too many on here at once, but it's probably fine. Like, shake the can, and this is the black-based ones. So again, same technique. And because I'm capable of learning, I've moved them further down. It's the same again, this time with the white undercoat. So yeah, the reason I'm spraying outside is this stuff's really noxious. You don't want to be spraying this inside. If you have to spray it inside, find a garage or something that you can leave the garage door open while it's raining or whatever. You don't want to be inhaling a lot of solvents. It's not great for you. Alright, those are all done. I'll show you what they look like undercoated. So the first technique we're going to do is to undercoat the miniatures in a single color and then dip them. Now probably the cheapest and easiest way to do this is to buy some spray paint from somewhere like Army Painter. Here's the available range from Army Painter. Now note that this video is not actually sponsored by Army Painter, so I haven't got a whole bunch of free stuff to throw away here. Now the simplest way to do this is just to buy a spray can from Army Painter and just do the exact same technique I showed you before. Just spray the color over the undercoat that you've already given it. I wasn't willing to buy 4 new cans of spray paint just to show you this technique, so I'm going to do it the other way, which uses an airbrush. Now you'll end up with exactly the same result with the spray can as you would with an airbrush, or very close to it. One just takes a lot more time, skill, energy, and practice. So do the spray can one. It's the simple and easy way to do it. I just don't want to buy 4 spray cans to show you what this would look like. The colors I'm going to use are pure red, ultramarine blue, green skin, and demonic yellow. These really represent 4 incredibly basic colors that you would have for models in a board game, or for factions in a board game. The whole idea behind painting them just one color is that they look like pieces. Not necessarily, bits of art, but effective models on the board. So we're just going to spray 4 of these in 4 different colors. Yeah, that's one nice and done, and that's pretty much what it would look like if you spray it with a can. Oh, just got to touch up a few details. Main difference with a can is you don't have to bloody clean a can off every time you use it. Airbrushes, neat as they are, you need to clean them every time you use them, and it's just a pain in the butt in that regard. Yeah, so that is, normally you would just buy one of those cans, spray them, get this sort of effect with just an undercoat and a spray. It would take you seconds to get, you know, put 10 models on a stick, spray them, leave them to dry for a couple of hours, come back, spray them again, and you have painted figures just like this. But we've got one more step we're going to do after that, and that involves doing a dip. We've got this product here, Strong Tone, Quick Shade. We're going to dip these things in Quick Shade and have a look how that turns out. The next step is we're going to get our Strong Tone Army Painted dip. There's three different types of this dip. I've got the strong one because it seems to be, I don't know, middle of the road, quite effective. Ooh, and this needs a real good stir. So there'll be a whole bunch of gloopy stuff on the bottom if you've never used one before. Stir it with a stirry stick, get it all. It says specifically don't shake it up. So, oh yeah, there's some molasses in there. So I'm giving this a good stir. It's the first time I've ever used this technique. I've seen the results, so this should be interesting. They recommend you use gloves when you're doing this stuff, and yeah, I probably should be using gloves. Probably all for later videos. I just had to go buy some. Didn't think it through. Alright. This appears not to be full of clumps. There's a big clump. Alright. It appears to be less full of clumps. Good stir, stir, stir. Alright. Just leave that to one side and wipe that down. That's quite nasty. Not pleasant stuff, this. Do keep it sealed when you're not using it. Okay, so we've got our Strong Tone here. Now, if you haven't got your miniatures on stands like I do, they recommend using tweezers or something. And you literally just grab the model and dunk it in there. Just give it a proper dunk. Oh wow, that's... Yep, that is totally and utterly dunked down there. And then they recommend giving it a couple of flicks. I might actually go outside and flick this off again once I'm done doing these initial sort of flicks back into the pot. Because that is on quite thick. It's pretty hard to see there. But we'll get some photos of it. It's just, yeah, absolutely soaked in this brown liquid that I'm going to shake off a little bit more outside. So we're just going to do the other ones as well. Dip. Ooh. Try to get that light in there a little bit better. Tap that off. Again, gonna go. Here we go. I'm gonna put this out and give it a good shake. And then the last two. Oh, that's got so much stuff on it. Alright, let's flick all that off. It's like a varnish. It's man, it's got quite a bit dripping off. Alright, put that down there. Let's have a look. Now I'm not going to do anything other with these other than flick some of this off outside. There we go, dip the final one. Literally called the dip technique. Tap that off. You can imagine if you're spray painting these and then dipping them in an assembly line, you could get through a ton of models in a very short amount of time. Alright, there we go. That one's done there. So, just going to put this lid back on because it is slightly noisome smelling. Oh, go on, you bastard. Boy, do I not want to have an accident with this on camera. Alright, there we go. Really need to secure that. Pop that on, good. And I'm going to shake these out outside, and then I'm going to leave them for dry for 24 hours. So it says 24 to 48 hours. We'll give them a look tomorrow, see how they go. Okay, so the second technique we're going to do is just base coat the miniatures in a metallic color and make them look like sort of classic chess pieces. We're just going to paint them a metal color and then give a simple wash over them, and that's it. And for this, all you really need is a good medium-sized brush for miniature painting and something to put your paint on. I actually quite like using these little fidget poppers because you can pour paint into them and then access the paint really easily. And we're going to run through 4 different types of metallic paint here. We're using the War Paints range. We're going to use gunmetal, greedy gold, weapon bronze, and I'm hopefully going to do something fun with that one in the end, and something a little different, a glittering green, so a metallic green. So I'm just going to do a very basic job with these. Nothing fancy, it's just put the paint on the figure and just, you know, cover it. Like, I'm not picking out any details. If you had access to metallic sprays, you can also do this and just spray them and then wash them later. But we're just going to show you how to quickly do that with a brush. So we're going to start with the gunmetal. Sorry. Shake your paints. Alright. Pop that in there. And you might need a little bit of water to water down your paints, but not much. And I'm just going to start getting in there straight away and just... We are not faffing about. We're not picking out details. We are just liberally applying that paint and pushing it around the model until it sort of has a relatively even cover on it. This is not precision painting of any kind or any way, shape or form. We are literally just getting the paint on the model as quickly and evenly as we can. And yeah, use a little bit of water to thin it out so you're not sort of coating the model in too much paint. I wonder if I need to bring that camera in. I might finish this one and then bring that camera in just a little bit closer. I'm not sure you can see everything that's happening here. Yeah, this shouldn't take very long at all because, again, we're not trying to paint within the lines. We're just trying to paint the whole model the exact same color and give it a relatively even finish. There we go. So yeah, that's that model there. And I'll take some photos of this once it dries just to show you how that looks when it's just as is. Might just reposition that camera slightly. The next one we're going to do is gold. We're just going to clean off the paint from that. I clearly put too much paint in there. I'm used to painting more than just one figure at a time currently. So we'll just put a little bit of gold in there. And again, a little bit of water, a little bit of gold. And we're just going to start liberally painting that on the figure. Just blah, blah. Gold has a little less even distribution. So this one's probably not going to look quite as good. And you might end up having to go back over this with a second coat. That's fine. We'll just do the first coat now. Let's get that on there nice and even and everywhere. Remember, this is painting without skill. You are just coating the model in paint. You're not trying to paint within the lines. You're not trying to create shapes. You're not trying to do any shading or anything. You're just trying to liberally coat the model in paint. Yeah, this one's definitely going to need a second coat. But that's fine. We'll just do exactly the same thing once it dries. And it's just started raining. So if you hear a bunch of rain noise in the background, let's get into these little crevices and nooks and crannies. Just make sure there's gold liberally painted around on this figure. Right, so that's the first coat of gold done. Again, I'll do some pictures of this with just one coat. I'll pop that down there. The third one we're going to do in the rain is some bronze. And again, we're just liberally getting that bronze on the middle. Look at how slapdash I'm making this. Nice and even. And yeah, there we go. It's a bronze one. Again, take some pictures of that once it's dry. And then we move on to the fourth and final one. In the middle of a storm. Glittering green. I'm really curious to see what this colour looks like because I've never used it before. Alright, here we go. We're going to put some green on there and we're just going to liberally put that on. And that's basically what we're doing here. We're just get stuck in. That is that. That's all evenly done there. Not long at all. Alright, I'm going to let these ones dry and then do a second coat, I think, on the gold one and the bronze one. I'm probably going to cheat and not actually let them dry and instead use some advanced drying science. Okay, that looks pretty good. So we're going to let these ones dry naturally, and I'm going to come out and do one ink layer for each of them, and then we'll take some photos after that. And yeah, we'll be back with the inks. Okay, so now we've got our metallic figures painted. We're going to put a single wash on them. So for the first one, I'm going to be using dark tone. It's very similar to the dip that we put it in, but it's actually a brush on thing. I'm going to use the little pottles again. I'm going to put some in there. I'm going to grab the model that was painted in gunmetal before, and we are just going to liberally paint this stuff on. Use a little bit of water, but not much, and just paint that on real, well, ink it on quite generously all over the model. And this should seep into the cracks on the figure and, you know, bring it out. This is going to look quite dark, but it's going to look quite good as a metallic model. Again, I'm using no fine brush strokes or anything. I am literally just splashing this on as haphazardly as I can. There you have it, and I'll get some pictures of that Once it dries, we're going to pivot straight from that one to green tone. And we're going to use green tone on the green model. This is a very dark green. We'll see how that looks on the sort of shiny green model. Looks pretty good. Alright, we're just going to put a little bit of black in as well, the strong tone as well. So we'll just mix a little bit of green tone and a little bit of black tone. And again, we're just vigorously covering the figure in all of that. It's a bit more green. You know, you don't want to obfuscate the figure so that you can't actually see the green underneath, but you want enough so that it is sinking into the recesses. Which, yeah, give it a good cover. And again, this is not taking much time. I'm not spending a lot of time working on these figures. Just get some of the excess tone off the base. Next we have one that we're operating out of a pottle. So I'm going to use here, I'm going to pop the pottle. And this is Seraphim Sepia. It's a Games Workshop figure. Games Workshop ink. I think they call them shade. Used to call them inks, now they call them shades. And this is going to go on the gold one. And again, we're just going to layer this on real generously. In fact, this one you can go super to town with because it's quite thin. I might just grab a little bit of that black as well. Just darken it up, but for the most part, this is just the sepia, just sort of a reddy brown color. And you can tell I'm not really paying too much attention because I'm not wearing my glasses like I was before, because I don't really need my glasses to do this kind of slapdash, throwing a shade on something. I don't like using these little pottle things compared to putting droppers in the palette over here. This is much easier to work with than having one of these. Citadel do some, Warhammer, Citadel, Games Workshop, whatever they're calling themselves now. They do some very good paints. I just don't like how they package them. It's a bit of a pain. Right, that's gold. Again, you'll see some pictures of how that guy looks. And then the last one, we're going to try something a bit different. Instead of using obvious color, so a dark green on the green, or a black on the metal, or a brownish color on the gold to sort of enrich it, we have the bronze statue here, and I'm going to use another Games Workshop model. Games Workshop technical, they call them. They're not paints, they're technicals. Called Nihilak Oxide, and this is to create an ambergris effect. Ambergris? No, can't remember what the term's called. It's when statues sort of corrode over time, bronze statues. So we're just gonna verdigris, that's it. We're just gonna gently brush this stuff over the whole statue, the whole figure, and not quite soak it in as much as we did the other ones. We just want to make this not quite so it's all this shade. And we just gently apply that all the way over the figure. And we'll see how that's going to turn out. As I say, just gently apply it. You're not painting within boundaries or anything, you're just trying to get it all over the whole model. Make sure every bit's done. This can be a little bit uneven. And here comes that rain again. And that, again, it's quite hard for you to see there, but I'll bring up some pictures of what that looks like when it dries. So yeah, those will be the metallics. I've just got a little bit to do touching up their bases once they dry, so I'll probably put another base coat on their bases just to get rid of all of the runoff and other bits and pieces that happen during this very slapdash procedure. But that's how you just put metallics and one wash on figures to get them looking presentable. Right, so the next type of painting we're going to do is going to turn these models here and we're going to dry brush them. Now, for dry brushing, you need a sort of beaten up old brush. I'm actually using an old makeup brush that I've trimmed the ends off. You can use any big sort of flattish brush to do this. But the key idea of it is that you take your paint, you put it down as you normally would, and you get a little bit on the end of the dry brush you're planning on using. But then you wipe it off on paper. You wipe most of it off on paper. And then you sort of pad the dry brush over the model. So what this does is it just starts transferring the paint to the highest parts of the model and not the lower parts. And with a big chunky brush like this, you just kind of dig in. So give a little bit more paint, brush most of it off, and just basically assault the model with the brush. And little bits of paint will get transferred on to the high areas. There's probably a lot better videos of how to exactly dry brush out there, but that's the technique. It's called dry brushing. It's very straightforward, and I recommend doing it on a dark undercoat. And we're just really gonna beat up this model with this brush. Like, I'm not being gentle at all. This is not using any kind of restraint. It's just, the main thing is making sure that the paint isn't too thick, and then just going to town with the big dry brush. Alright, and that is basically that figure done for a very basic style. It's a little hard to see in this light, of course, but I'll bring up a picture of it in a second. I'll do a little bit more on the back. That was in a sort of copper. So you can do metallics this way as well. So as well as painting them or spraying them and then covering them in ink, you can just do metallics for a dry brush effect. Now, so basically just do the same thing 4 times here, so I decided to cut a bunch of this video out. Here's the red copper one I was just doing. The second model, we went for some grayscale effects, so I did 2 levels of dry brushing of worn stone and beige matter, brain matter beige. Third model, I went for Magecast Magenta and Warlock Magenta to get a purple effect, and for the final one, I went for a dry brush orange using these 2 colors. I'm not actually very happy with how these dry brush ones turned out, which is one of the reasons why I cut this big chunk out of the video. Alright, the fourth technique we're going to do is just a single coat speed paint. And we're going to go for the same 4 player colors we did for the other models. So we're going to start off with a Zealot Yellow. This is a slightly older speed paint that I kind of want to get rid of. So we're going to just put those in our bottles. Again, I'm going to use our big thick brush. And we are just going to grab as much as we can and liberally just splash that on like there's no tomorrow. Just bloop. Get that going real good. And just cover the entire model in the speed paint. La la la. Again, you are not painting within the lines. You are just going hard. And you are trying to coat the model in as much painty goodness as you can. That is how long that takes to put on 1 coat of speed paint. And I'll show you how that looks when it's dried in a little bit. It's going to get tons over the base, but that's fine. We're not touching the bases up in this video. If in doubt, paint those black or paint them the same color. We're going to go straight to the Shamrock Green for the green model. Pop that in there. And again, we're just going to grab this model. We're going to grab a big loaded up brush, and we are just... See how little I care. Oh, that's vigorous. That looks really cool. Honestly, of all the techniques I'm going to show you, this is probably the one that if you want your models to look pretty cool with absolutely no effort whatsoever, this is probably the way to go. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Because even just single colored with vibrant colors and zero technique. I am literally just mashing the paint in there like it ain't no thing. And that's that model just totally covered in that, and we'll see how that looks when I'm done. And then we're going to go to the blue one. And this is magic blue. Wow, that actually looks pretty damn cool just as a model piece by itself, as a game piece. There we go. And that's all covered. Man, this is so quick. I know speed paints are like speedy, but it's just kind of every time I use them, I'm like, man, these are good. It's so fast. Put a couple of bottles in there, and we're going to do the red one next. And again, same thing, load up your brush. This does not take talent. I'm not even looking at where I'm smearing the paint, really. I'm just, it's on the bottle, No. Anyone says that, I don't have the talent, I don't have the eye to ever paint models. Well, you might not have the talent or eye to paint them to a professional standard. People who are very good at model painting, well, they're artists. They're absolutely artists. This is a sort of was color by numbers version, and it's good enough a lot of the time. And it is still satisfying, and it's the other thing is it's a building block. It's stepping stones. Like if you enjoyed having your models painted like this, you might go, well, you know what? I might next time do a little bit more. Boom. And again, I'm not touching up the bases here. I'm just making sure that every single part of this model is liberally coated in speed paint. And yeah, those are looking pretty good. Here we go, and I'll show you how those guys look when they're finished in a wee bit. So the fifth and final technique we're going to do is basically the same as the last one, but instead of completely draining this model in one color, we're going to leave a couple of bits as unpainted as we can. Like, put the speed paint on vigorously, but we're going to try and leave off the cloaks, most of the detail on the cloak, and the hammer. Now, if we get some paint on that, that's fine. We are going to paint over that a bit later. But this is sort of half speed paint, half regular painting. It's a little bit more effort, but it ends up with a slightly better result. But we are going to start just by speed painting these guys exactly the same way we did previously. But this time, with the added benefit, I actually have to pay attention to what I'm doing. So I don't want to be getting lots of paint on this cloak, and I don't want to be getting lots of paint on the hammer. It's not that big a deal. We can just paint over later, but, you know, not if we don't have to. So we're just going to get in there, just start pushing this paint around. It's very watery, so and very thin, so you can just sort of gently push it around your brush. You'll get a little bit of experience doing that when you play around with just dumping the paint on them. You'll get a little bit more control. So this does take a little bit more skill, but not a huge amount more. It's just like one step up. It's something you can do after you've done the previous one quite a bit. And yeah, we're just going to liberally coat this guy over this side as well. Oh, that's quite turning out quite interesting. So here we got a little bit on the cloak back there. But we're going to get these pauldrons into here. Going to leave that hammer untouched, and same with the hands down here. Yeah, and hands on the hammer. We might get a little bit of speed paint on the hammer itself. It's not that big a deal. Let's get a little under there. The key is that we get most of the model covered in the speed paint, so it's all nice and quickly done. That is quite the striking paint. Alright, oh, we've got a little bit behind here. A little bit behind there. Big cloaks. A little bit difficult to paint. So that's what that looks like there. I'll show you what these all look like at the halfway point as well. So put that one down there. Get some fresh water. You might have noticed this little water thing I'm using. Steph got me this for birthday or Christmas a little while ago. It's really handy. It just keeps a steady supply of clean water. I've been using it a bunch. Now, let's experiment with a couple of slightly unusual colours here. We'll paint one really bright pink. See how that turns out. It's okay. That looks that looks quite interesting. So yeah, that's that one done. Just again, I'll show you the pictures of these once they're dry. And we'll go for Hoplite Gold for the next one. So this is a speed paint metallic. Again, I have all these paints, and I've not used a good number of them before, so this has been quite fun. I've not used these speed paint metallics yet. Ooh, okay. Keep these thin. Don't put too much on. It's quite pre-thinned. It's looking good though. Oh, and I got way too much of that on the cloak. Hilarious. That cloak is basically almost entirely gold just from bit stripping down because I put too much on the brush to start with. You know, you can be sloppy. You do not have to be super precise. That's the whole point of this video, is we are looking at ways for painting for people who aren't very good at painting or aren't very practiced, or you know, just want to have their models painted. Don't necessarily want to become great artists in the process. You still are an artist, you know, even if you're just painting models like this, it still counts as art. Still human created art, which is wonderful. I'm just going to get that gold, push that one around. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. And there, oh yeah, we've got quite a bit on the cloak. That's okay. Quite a bit on the hammer there as well. But mostly that's looking fine. Okay. There we go. And finally, we're going to use Speed Paint Talus Bronze. Again, I've not used this particular speed paint before, the bronze. So we shall see how that goes. So this is easily the most technically complex of the ones we've done so far, but it's still using speed paints, which are real simple to use, and it's still compensating for our overall lack of ability and experience as model painters. Alright, that is the fourth one in this series done, and I'm going to leave those to dry for a bit because we definitely want them dry before the next coat goes on. So while it doesn't take a lot of time and actual, you know, brush on model, there's a lot of drying time between things. So you got to prepare for that. It's really good to have an area set up where you can just leave things set up. Otherwise, you have to bring out your paints, paint a couple, and then wait for a couple of hours for them to dry. So yeah, I'll probably come back this evening and see how these ones look. Alright, now for the final stage for these speed painted ones, we're just going to do the exact same colours on the hammers for all of them, and then we're going to do the cloaks the same colours for all of them, just with simple basic paint. We're going to use the gunmetal, which is the same one I undercoated that metal model with previously, and we are just going to water the paint down slightly and just liberally paint it on. Ooh. Let's get a little bit of shaky action on that. wasn't pouring for some reason. And just a little bit of water and mix that in there. And we're going to grab these, and we've got to be a little bit careful now. And we just paint over that. Now, if you've got some speed paint that you've made a mess of before, that's fine. You just paint over it. And all we're trying to do here is just put a little bit of paint on there for the hammer itself. Nothing else, just the hammer. Rotate and try to get it different sides. We're not doing any shading or anything like that. We're just putting some metal on the hammer. We don't really need to do much more, because we're not trying to expert paint this. We're just trying to paint it so it looks okay. Any little bits there, you can just tidy up. It's looking all right. And we just repeat that process with the other four. Okay, so that camera cut out, and I've painted these models without really being able to show you what's been going on there for a bit. So hopefully that doesn't ruin the video. I'll just paint this one up. So we're just about done with the hammers, unfortunately, which is kind of awkward. Yeah, we're just liberally putting that paint on the brush. Wow, that's totally distracted my train of thought, having that camera go off. Alright, so that is the hammers all done. We just wash that brush off in our little brush washy thing. If you don't have one of these fancy little brush washers like I do, I recommend using 2 bottles of water. One to get most of the dirty stuff off, and then one that's mostly clean. Sort of like get most of it off there, clean the brush, and then do it again in the slightly cleaner one, and change those every session. Right, now we're going to use this Diabolic Plum, and we're going to do some of the cloaks in that. So we've got some here that was left over from last session. It's still usable. Just get some fresh water. There we go. And we're just going to liberally apply that to the cloaks at the back. So just like so. And that camera's on now. Unfortunate. Right, we'll just tidy up these little bits here. Any bit of white fabric showing on the hammer, we'll just paint that purple as well. Yeah, you don't have to be super precise here. Going a little bit over the edges isn't going to kill anyone. This bit at the back's a bit tricky with this cloak. But again, we're trying to paint stuff that looks okay on the table from a distance. That is passable pieces for a game. Let's get a little bit of purple in there. And a little bit across there. And that's that one done. And we've just literally put a base coat of purple over the top of that. White area that wasn't painted before. And we're going to repeat that on the other models. I painted lots of terrible models before I got vaguely good. And then I got quite good at painting models, and then I decided I didn't want to get any better because the level of painting I was doing at the time, models were taking me hours and hours and hours, and you know, I could paint almost an entire game in the time it was taking me to paint one really nice model. So I ended up developing techniques to make my life a little bit speedier. Let's try something different on this guy. We won't do purple. Green. We'll grab a yellow. Which yellow should we use? We shall grab a color called Inner Light. You see, I'm not even ordering that down. It's just going on very sweetly. Let's go straight on top of the white. Yellow, probably not a particularly good choice if you've made a lot of messes with your undercoating and you've got another color you're trying to paint over, because yellow is quite just a thin color in many ways. It doesn't go over things very well. And you really want to paint it on top of white, even if you're spraying the model black, you kind of want to paint the bit that you're going to do yellow white and then paint it yellow, because yellow's a bastard. Whereas colors like red and dark blue, really forgiving colors. Oranges and yellow in particular, just bastards. Alright, just touching these last bits up. So yeah, this particular technique isn't exactly a no skill, anyone can do it one, but it's kind of the next step off. And where you should be, you know, probably making your first steps if you want to paint a little bit better. Oops. Oh, fuck that up a little. That's okay. Got a little bit of wet blending at the back. A little bit of green left over there, so it's just kind of become part of the yellow texture at the back now. Okay, that is those guys done. And the last thing I'm going to do is just put a little bit of color on their bases. So I might as well just use the matte black. So get all of the white stuff off the base there. And that is that. Those are those figures done in a pretty respectably short time. So let's see how that'll turn out. Alright, so there we are, we're all done, and we'll just bring these models up here so I can show you again, and let's have a sort of think about how good these effects turned out. The single color and dip, I don't really like this sort of finish, but I think they'll be fine if you had a lot of pieces and you wanted to make them look just like board game pieces instead of being detail models. So if you had a game that had a ton of different units and you really just wanted them to be in one set color, that's probably a good look. I actually quite like the metallic look. I think those turned out all right. I quite like the way the bronze one turned out. In particular, I thought that was quite a neat finish. Pretty unhappy with my dry brushing. I thought those ended up looking pretty bad. I've dry brushed a whole game before. I've dry brushed Zombicide, and that looked a lot better than the result I got here. It's probably the crappy brush I was using. It's probably the paint as well, because the paint was just a little too thin. Citadel paints tend to gloop up a bit better than the army painter ones I'm using currently. So maybe if you're using dry brushing, you might not want to use the army painter ones. They're sort of pre-thinned, and it just didn't work very well. The speed painted ones, these ones here, again, if you just want pieces to look like game pieces and not fully painted, this looks great. These look awesome, and on the table they really stand out. They really pop. Like, I can put that one distance away, you can tell that's a knight, you can tell he's a blue knight, and there's just enough dimensionality there, so little bits of depth to make out. But of course, the best result is speed paints and a little bit of painting on top. I think those turned out pretty well considering how very little effort went into painting them. So yeah, these are the 5 different techniques. These are the 20 models. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if this makes you feel confident in picking up a brush or picking up a spray can and giving it a go. And a reminder, 3 Minute Board Games does not do paid content. This video is not sponsored by Army Painter. Please support us on Patreon if you can. And remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.